Hello, this is Deus Ex Machina here, the man who wants to turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. In this video I will attempt to say the truth, however it is nearly impossible to say the perfect truth because, ultimately, the world is very confusing. There's a lot of lying going on, and with a scientific method, one may attempt to determine what the truth is. Alright? So anyway, my entire purpose for existing is to turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. By that I mean the entire situation. And so I never really optimize my videos or the titles or the thumbnails for them to blow up. For example, when I made my speech on sexuality and much more for adults, I didn't think that title would be making it blow up. I didn't include any thumbnail with any visuals. The video is just a speech with no visual content. And so for some reason, that's at 10,000 views and approaching 40 likes. And I felt moved to give that speech. And much of what I said was correct. However, on listening to it again after it blew up, I realized some of the statements were flawed. And so the description corrects any inaccurate statements and so on. Now, when I uploaded Deus Ex Machina, the football god, I admit I did try and optimize the title to help it blow up, because if you say you are a god of something or whatever, that actually can increase the chances it becomes popular. And however, the thumbnail for that short I did not choose. This is simply what was chosen by YouTube itself. And so anyway, for some reason when I uploaded that, within the first 15 minutes of it being on the internet, it had over 1,000 views, and it's peaked at like 5,000 views. Anyway, this whole channel is my attempt to turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. And so I also understand the truth about the universe, which is the following: anything you could envy comes with a curse. And so fame comes with a curse, because the amount of attention you get could be a bit much. The inability to have a private life could be undesirable, and so on and so forth. And so, because I understand the truth, which is that anything you could envy often comes with curses or downsides, I'm a person without envy. Anyway, and so with the scientific method, I'll tell you the truth about human sexuality as well. Everyone's lying. Everyone is exaggerating. And so, with the scientific method, and with frame analysis, and with Grok, I have converged on realistic estimates for the parameterizations of male porn stars. And so Grok is able to scour the internet where people are doing realistic, unexaggerated frame analysis of porn stars' peak erect size. And so there are two ways to measure maximally erect male size. There is not bone pressed, and then there's bone pressed. And so basically, not bone pressed from the top, you're going from where the dick starts at the body to the head. Bone pressed, you are compressing the fat pad to the bone, then going to head. The difference in those two metrics may be a half of an inch, right? And so a male's full bone pressed erect length is insertable, right? Because the male fat pad compresses the bone during maximal insertion. And so, for example, for Anton Harden, if you query Grok to analyze the internet where people are doing frame analysis, they might say that perhaps his peak when not being bone pressed could be like 8.3, something like that. But when you bone press, you're adding maybe half of an inch. And so then let's say that Anton's peak bone press maybe roughly 9, like 8.8, something like that, right? Now, these are again myself trying to use the scientific method to understand the truth. And so, but it's really hard to do because everything's confusing and everyone's lying. And so then maybe Anton's like 8.3, not bone pressed. Bone pressed maybe 8.8, something like that. But then he's 5'7", and so that size on his short body will pop, and so you'll see content exaggerating him to 11, 11.5 or 12 inches, and so on and so forth. Right? And so, yeah, and so on and so forth. I'm really trying to just to like share the truth because it's very hard to converge on the truth. And so, legitimately, Grok might say 8.3 not bone pressed for Anton, meaning maybe 8.8 bone pressed. This is peak. Then you'll see 11, 11.5, and 12-inch marketing exaggeration by the porn industry. And then Grok might say 5.75 to 6 inches shaft girth circumference, but he could be a bit wider than he is tall, or like an oval cross section, and so on. Now, for Julio Gomez, who was break, if you query Grok about BPL estimate for Julio, at peak it might say around 9.5, right? And so basically for Anton it might say estimated length something like 8.3, but that could be like not bone pressed. So you bone press it, then it's maybe 8.8, something like that. For Julio, Grok is gonna say peak bone press around 9.5. And so let's say Anton bone pressed is 8.8, but then Julio is 9.5. And so Anton would get exaggerated to maybe 12 inches by the porn industry, but Julio would get exaggerated to 14 inches, and so on and so forth. This, that, and the other. Anyway, and so the thing about Julio is that basically you have the following, which is that basically you have the following, which is he has a pelvic detachment. And so basically, shaft that is normally within the fat pad, which is a male's functional bone press direct length, shaft that's within the fat pad is externalized with a pelvic detachment. And so basically, once you get a pelvic detachment, the bulk of a male's full bone press direct length becomes external viewable length. And so I've done my own frame analysis of Giulio, like when he's lying down erect in a scene with Abby Love, with his thumb there as a reference object. And so a human male thumb, myself, is moderately tall with relatively large hands. The width of my thumb is a little bit less than 1 inch. And so Giulio is shorter than me. Hand size tends to scale with height. And so using an increment of maybe slightly wider than the width of his thumb in that frame, you can understand why the peak bone press for Giulio ends up being 9.5, because about 9.5 of those increments span his whole length. Now, at the base of Giulio's dick, you can see a pelvic detachment. And so the bulk of Giulio's full bone press length is externalized or viewable length. And so practically the bulk of Giulio's 9.5 peak bone press is external or viewable length. And so you can see the sign of the pelvic detachment at the base of his dick. And so that's externalizing shaft that is normally within the fat pad, right? And so on. Now this could have been done because he had an intentional surgical ligament cut, or because sickle cell anemia and priapism caused damage causing a compromised suspensory ligament, causing a naturally occurring detachment. And so, the long story short, for Anton Bruck might say estimated length, 8.375, something like that. That could be not bone pressed, which means bone pressed could be like more so like 8.8, 8.9, or basically 9 for Anton at peak. And the porn industry could exaggerate him to 11, 11.5, or 12 inches. And for Giulio, it might say around 9.5, and then he was exaggerated to 14 inches. Right, and so basically everything gets exaggerated, right? And so Giulio is more than Anton, and so therefore Giulio's exaggeration was more than Anton's, right? So on and so forth. And so, anyway, yeah. Yeah. Now, yeah. Yeah. So anyway, in the past, in jest, kind of as a joke, because of my knowledge that everything gets exaggerated, I said in certain communications that I was 10 inches. However, I know for a fact that the formal metric, again, is bone press direct length. And so, in recent measurements without parallax, my peak in bone press direct length is somewhere in the 8.75 to 9 inch range, which is roughly 9. And so basically my peak insertable bone press is going to be somewhere between 8.75 and 9. I did a recent measurement to confirm that without parallax, viewed flush, doing a bone press. And so Grok for Anton will say he's 5'7", maybe length is 8.375, but that could be not bone pressed. Maybe if you bone press him, then at a 0.5 to 8.375, you get 8.875, basically 9. And so let's say, for all intents and purposes, my peak length is the same as Anton Harden's peak length, but I'm just taller. And then for the girth circumference of Anton, it will say between 5.75 and 6 inches around. And then I've done my measurement, and I've seen between 5.8 and 6. And so I could be pretty much the same as Anton, but Anton could be like wider or have like an oval cross section, whereas I'm like circular. So my shaft is circular, Anton could be a bit wider. Anyway, so interestingly, however, I have absurd girth around my glands, and so the head of my dick swells to 6.5 to 6.7 girth circumference. And so having a shaft girth between 5.8 and 6 is still very thick, a high percentile, but then my glands is thicker. So anyway, so on and so forth. So anyway, but I'm a grower, and so my flaccid size is often 5.5 inches. And so if I'm flaccid and freezing, it could be 4 inches. If I'm dehydrated or some form of exertion is causing my flaccid to constrict, flaccid could be smaller. But my typical flaccid, when warm and hydrated, is 5.5 inches. And so, for example, in the recently uploaded short, Deus Ex Machina, barefoot juggle walking, you can see in the thumbnail that there's a slight bulge there, and I am obviously flaccid, playing soccer, right, or internationally football, and so that is my flaccid size causing that bulge, not my erect. And so my flaccid may be 5.5, but then my peak erect bone press is going to be between 8.75 and 9. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, so you've seen like scenes with Anton Harden, who's 5'7", and some tiny girl like Kylie Rocket, who's 5'3", and there's multiple orgasms. The second time I had intercourse in my life was with a woman 11 years older than me, and she said that she had 4 orgasms and her legs were shaking, and that 2 of the orgasms were on the floor and then 2 of them were on the couch. And so I suppose my size has given multiple orgasms as well. Now, in terms of girth, I think the outer third of the vagina is most responsive to girth. And so my glans has extreme girth. And so as long as I nearly pull out all the way at every single stroke, then my glans girth applies extreme girth pressure to the outer third of the female vagina. And so on. So anyway, so on and so forth. Now, I've as well sort of figured out certain things where basically I figured out how to maintain my peak size. And so basically, that involves strong legs, strong core, strong cardio, strong pelvic floor, strong vitamin D levels, being warm, being hydrated, being aroused, and then obviously not being horribly sick with a high fever and a virus. And so in my present knowledge, I can maintain my peak size, which is going to be roughly a peak insertable bone press in the 8.75 to 9 inch range, all insertable bone press length, and so on. Anyway, and so on. So anyway, and so basically, I believe that although I in jest said I was 10 inches in the past, if I was a porn star, if you have a peak bone press of something like, 8.8, 8.9, the porn industry is going to exaggerate that to at least 12 inches. And so note that Anton, not bone pressed, could be 8.3. Bone pressing maybe is 8.8. Industry says 12 inches. Julio, bone press peak maybe 9.5. Industry said 14 inches. And so myself, peak bone press maybe 8.8, 8.9. I said I was 10. I could have been saying 12 because 8.8, 8.9 bone press at peak, you're gonna the porn industry exaggerates that to at least 12. And so, if you want to call me some charlatan for saying I was 10, I note that in porn, 8.8, 8.9 equals at least 12 inches in the porn star scale. And so, if you take a measuring device and look at what 8.75 actually is, hold it up to your face, right? That is roughly my bone press. And that my peak bone press is going to be 8.8, 8.9, and so on. Anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, and so I don't care about anything because because I'm telepathic, and so their brains would think I'm a liar. But everyone is a liar. And so Anton is not 12 inches. His bone press could be somewhere in the 8.5 to 9 range at maximum. Julio was not 14 inches. His bone press was maybe 9.5 at maximum. So anyway, yeah. And so am I a liar for saying in the past I was 10 inches? It was said in jest because the porn industry exaggerates size and everyone's lying. And so if everyone is lying, am I a liar? No. And so my real peak bone press is again 8.8, 8.9. And if I was a porn star, they'd say that was 12, not even 10. Right? Whole point is everything's lying. All right? So anyway, so one time a woman said she had 4 orgasms with me in a single session, and her legs were shaking. Another time she started bleeding internally due to some kind of tear, not period blood. Then I got very sick with a high fever and virus, and so I wasn't potent, and so I had underwhelming sex when I was not potent and very sick. At present, given all my knowledge, I can maintain my peak size. Sitting down, standing up doesn't matter. So on. In pure relationships, they say in sickness and in health. And so basically, having sex when I was sick and not potent opened my eyes into the nature of that commitment. And so, if I'm sick, you're my partner, you want sex from me, I'm not potent. I'm healthy, then I'm potent. I openly challenge any female consciousness that is hearing this to sex, and I guarantee multiple orgasms. And I'll demonstrate that I'm not a liar. But everyone's a liar. So anyway. Yeah. So anyway, now more so focus on Julio now, or Break. His porn profile would say he was 6 feet tall. But people analyzing his barefoot height in comparison to female co-stars like Alexa Grace say he's more like 5'9", right? And then myself, my afternoon barefoot was measured as 6 feet 3.5 inches, meaning no shoes, compressing the hair on top of my head. And 6 foot 3.5 inches, without exaggeration. Whereas Break might be like 5'9". People analyzed his barefoot in comparison to female co-stars like Alexa Grace and so on, realized he probably actually is not 6 feet barefoot. Anyway, and so in an exaggerated world, Break is 6 foot tall and 14 inches, but in the real world, he's 5'9" barefoot and maybe a 9.5 bone press at maximum. Anyway, right? And so basically, I did standing pictures like I was a porn star. And so I scaled my standing picture with Julio kneeling performing insertion, roughly fully erect. And so basically, I used the scaling factors, the size of Julio's head and myself, and the width of our thighs. And so we're both turned to the side. And so length from back of neck to nose, I made the same on Julio and myself. Width of the thigh that is nearest to the camera, I made the same on Julio and myself. And so my peak bone press is 8.8, 8.9. Julio is estimated at around 9.5. And so in that to scale image, the lengths on Julio and myself of our dicks is actually looking identical. But obviously I'm slightly thinner in the shaft, because Julio is the thickest. Then he would have a small glans, I have a large glans. And so roughly how Julio and I stack up is, he is 5'9", his peak bone press is 9.5, and that's been externalized with a pelvic attachment. His shaft girth is 6.5 to 6.7, but then his glans or head is small. Myself is 6 foot 3.5, and peak bone press of 8.8, 8.9. Shaft girth is thinner than him, like between 5.8 and 6, but then my glans girth reaches his shaft girth. My glans girth is 6.5 to 6.7 around. And so ironically in that image, to scale, our lengths look about the same. And then it's like there's this inversion where Julio has a thick shaft and then a small glans, and I have a slightly thinner shaft but then a large glans. And so you can see in that image, which I can't share on YouTube, that the lengths are the same. In the shaft girth I'm a little bit thinner, and then he has a small glans, I have a large glans, and my glans girth equals his shaft girth. Now the difference between a circle that is 6 inches in circumference versus 6.7 is very minimal. So you can plot it on Desmos, and you'll see that is roughly the girth difference in shaft between me and Julio, and so on. And so so on and so forth. Julio was the thickest cut of genetics because of sickle cell anemia and priapism causing swollen tissue. And so while Julio's shaft girth could apply extreme girth pressure to the outer third of the vagina, my glands can apply equivalent pressure as long as I nearly pull out all the way with each stroke, and so on. Anyway, I'm not fully white. My white genetics come from Spanish, British, Irish, but I have black genetics as well, which will cause my nose to be somewhat wide, my lips to be kind of thick, and the hair on my head and my beard to be somewhat curly. And I have an accumulated golden brown complexion, which is not simply a tan, but because of the percentage of my genetics that are black or African. And so I'm a hybrid. Anyway, I do not actually want to be a male porn star because there are curses to it. I won't detail all the curses to it, but there are many men who have respectable careers and then keep their sexuality private, and that lifestyle is amazing. So anyway, so on and so forth. Now, while I am slightly thinner than Julio, I'm about the same girth as Mandingo or Fred, and then I'm thicker than Hollywood Cash. So so I have an OnlyFans profile, and so there's a few fans on there, and so on. So yeah. So so let's see now. What else? Yes. Now, I had conjectured in that video on sexuality that it was temperature causing homeostasis, leading to greater blood flow to the genitalia over generations during puberty, leading to more nutrients to genitalia, leading to evolution of larger genitalia for African origin men. However, that theory does not have much scientific support. The life history theory, where basically given high pathogen exposure and mortality in sub-Saharan Africa, there was evolutionary selection pressure for males with high testosterone as well as females with high fertility or estradiol. High testosterone men being more endowed, high fertility estradiol females being more impressive in terms of breast and backside. It's why you have the whole thing where on average African origin men are slightly more endowed than the whites, and the African origin women will on average have larger breasts and backside than the whites. But as well, just like with everything, there are anomalies. Although on average the African origin humans will be more sexually impressive, whether it's male or women, there are going to be white women who have very large natural breasts and very large natural backside, and then there as well will be white men who are extremely endowed. And so the world record holder for male penis size is Matt Barr, white British male. And so genetics and hormonal exposure during fetal development, you can have white men who are very endowed, and so on. And so Matt Barr is larger than any black man, the world record holder, and so on. And so on. Now I have the image to scale with myself and break as visual proof that I'm not a liar. And so images are worth 1,000 words. And so that image is showing myself in break looking comparable. His peak bone press estimated at around 9.5, myself 8.8, 8.9, so on and so forth. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, and so the female vagina, when it becomes aroused, is going to elongate. The depth of the cervix will elongate. And so, even for a taller, larger woman, the depth of the cervix does not exceed about 8 inches. And so a male's full bone press is insertable length. And so on and so forth. And so they're going to be women who have smaller vaginal accommodation, maybe when they're fully aroused, cervix is 6 inches deep, then larger women who have maximum cervical depth of 8 inches. And so the Asian women are smaller in terms of vaginal accommodation than the Western women. And Asian men have on average smaller bone press than the Western men. And so what I want to see is in the pure future there are simply evolutionary matches for each other, women with smaller accommodation or with smaller men. And for a pure relationship there must be intellectual, emotional connection, and so on. And then there are also sexual matches as well, and so on. And so I'm not so fool who thinks that being large makes me better or superior to other men. That is a sort of understanding only for the fools, and so on. Anyway, yes. So anyway, yes. So anyway, what else now? Yes. Yes. So anyway, what else now? My thoughts on reforming capitalism. So I will tell you something about the world. In a dark way, the whole thing is a machine that has evolved to generate profit. Okay? And so you go to a Dairy Queen, there's a bunch of ice cream. Is all the sugar content, this, that, and the other, and all the ice cream offerings of Dairy Queen necessarily good for you, or does your body need that to intake? Answer is no. If you're a professional athlete, you cannot have too much Dairy Queen ice cream. All right? Yet still, the profit model is such that a bunch of human brains, which when they consume sugar, get a dopamine release, and then a bunch of customers get habit loops to having Dairy Queen ice cream. And then all the slaves with brains who are weak, addicted to dopamine from sugar, will sometimes go to Dairy Queen to eat the sugar. And then the Dairy Queen owners get rich at the expense of human health. And so diabetes and obesity statistics must improve. And so I was at a Dairy Queen and I saw some fellow just sitting alone eating a Dairy Queen ice cream, and so on. And I'm like, well, this is entirely wrong. Okay. Similarly as well, Dave's Hot Chicken. They say, oh, it started with $900 and like 4 guys in a parking lot or something was the start of the company. And then they got their big break when a newspaper or some publishing entity said, try this midnight chicken, it's gonna blow your mind. And then all of a sudden they blew up and they're really good spicy chicken. All right. Now, you buy a Dave's Hot Chicken meal, what, $13, 2 pieces of chicken, fries, bread, Dave's sauce, Okay? When you're eating a healthy meal, you should try and see the whole rainbow of colors: vegetables, carbohydrates, meats. Okay? When you're buying a Dave's chicken meal, you're seeing yellow fries, orange chicken, white, or something like that, whatever color bread is. Bread could be like, bread varies in color. Let's say you have brownish bread or something like that, or whitish bread, and then yes, like brownish whitish bread, and then Dave sauce. This is just looking like a color scheme of yellow, orange, brown, something. Okay? And so they optimize the chicken to be addicting. And so in their statement as to how the company formed, they explicitly say, and we just keep on creating this addicting chicken. Now, for $13, you're getting 2 pieces of chicken, fries, bread, Dave's sauce. Okay? And then the 4 people who started Dave's Chicken are rich as ever. And then all the slaves are working in the kitchen to make the chicken. And then all the people's stupid dopamine addicted brains say, wow, this spicy chicken is really epic. And then the meal in general is not the healthiest meal you could have, nor is it the most efficient for amount of money you're getting. And so you could buy a whole pack of chicken breasts, okay, for less money than the $13 it takes to buy a meal of Dave's chicken. And instead of 2 chicken tenders, you're getting a whole pack of chicken breasts that you can cook, right? So anyway, and so basically the whole thing is evolved for profit, and then there's subtle evil in it, okay? Because the meal is not the best for you. The recipe is optimized to be addicting spicy chicken, and then this, that, and the other, okay? So anyway, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, and so similarly as well, economy, capitalism, how thing works, the pornographic industry as well. The male porn stars are generating revenue from their sexual ability and this, that, and the other, and endowments, making scenes that people want to watch that involve intense orgasms, squirting orgasms, leg shaking orgasms because of endowment, because of size, or whatever. Okay? And then basically consciousness wants to watch that, and then they all the attention that gets is monetizable by requiring a subscription fee to watch the content, and then also ad revenue and so on for any companies associated with the pornographic company, and so on. Okay? And so on. Now, in terms of sexual workers, Julio Brake used to say doing sessions at $350 an hour. And so maybe for some women who want to have sex with him, or this, that, and the other. Interestingly, given the image where I look very comparable to Julio, in jest, I could say, because I am comparable but slightly less than Julio, that doing sessions for me is $300 an hour, because I'm a little bit less than Julio, and so instead of $350 an hour, it is $300 an hour for me. Anyway, a woman 11 years older than me, 35 years old, 5'9" or 5'10", 160 pounds, flat as a board on top, but very, very large backside, that would actually jiggle with every step she'd take as she'd walk noticeably. Okay? It said she had like 4 orgasms the very first time she had sex with me, and her legs were shaking, and she required lube to even take me. because I have an extremely thick glands, and so the glands of my dick wasn't fitting inside of her. It needed lube. Anyway, shaft is slightly thinner than glands. So on. Anyway, and so with me, I am comparable to Julio. My glands girth is the same as Julio's shaft girth, and so for me, who is slightly less than Julio, instead of 350 an hour, 300 an hour. Anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, anyway, so yeah, anyway, so let's see now. Yes. 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 So anyway, now another thing as well, I will address the following about reform to capitalism. Okay, athletes. Okay, so I was raised by a single mother. Okay, she always telling me about intellectual things about school. Okay, I didn't have a father figure teaching me about sports. And so I discovered my passion for soccer, or internationally football, when I was 14 years old, when my friends told me about FIFA 14, and I thought it was very cool. I thought the skills in the game were good and cool, and so I started trying to learn how to do those skills myself. How to do the skills from the video game in real life, how to shoot, how to dribble, how to control the ball, how to do the skill moves from FIFA in real life, and so on. Okay? And so I formally started trying to learn how to play soccer or football when I was 14 years old. Okay? And so basically, that is very, very late. Very, very late. And so here's how the world is, okay? I possess Bachelor of Science in Mathematics, double minor in Computer Science and Physics. Did all of that with 3.7 out of 4 GPA. Could have been slightly better GPA if there was not a year of remote instruction due to COVID, and so on. And then I got into a very competitive electrical engineering graduate program, which I dropped out of because I was attending on a loan, and the debt I would accrue did not feel proportionate to the value. And so problem sets were repetitive chores, not making me smarter. Textbook I could read online as a free PDF. And so it felt like the debt I would be accruing was not proportional to the value I would be receiving, so I dropped out and canceled my loans before they became permanent. Anyway, and so on and so forth. And so on and so forth. Anyway, so let's see. And so clearly, my life has been mainly energy towards the intellectual and technical engineer sort of pathway. Mathematics, physics, computer science, electronics, physics, laboratory research, technical person, okay, engineer person, okay. As I'm saying this, I'm 25. I'll be 26 in December of this year. Okay, and so basically, I have a passion for soccer or football, and so the short on 5,000 views of me doing soccer tricks called Deus Ex Machina, the football god. Okay, it's me doing intentional rainbow flick over my head, doing it around the world, flicking it up, stalling it on my chest, popping it off and settling it and taking a simple shot on target. Okay, and so on. Okay. A few recent shorts are me juggling while walking barefoot, and so and one of them I include where I lose the ball and it rolls away from me towards the end. Another one, the conclusion is epic because I flick the ball up for a volley and then actually sort of score in a makeshift sort of rural scrimmage goal consisting of 3 wooden logs creating the goal. And so the ball actually strikes the fence inside the goal defined by the 3 wooden logs, and then so on and so forth. So anyway, after my volley, I'm playing barefoot, and so my maximum shot power for volleys, if I really want to hit high shot power volley, where maybe I'm not striking the ball to go so high up into the air, but a bit lower and more powerful, and so on, I can do all those things. And so long story short, everything is wrong. And so basically, I'll tell you what I mean by this. Fundamentally, money is proportional to usefulness. If you are a more useful person, you earn more money. But here's where this gets very, very lopsided, and so on. Why do professional athletes, the world's best athletes, make so much money? Are they more useful than the engineers? The answer is, in a way, yes. Here's why. Getting tons of attention because you are among the best in the world at something makes you useful. In what way? Useful to the club that you play for because you are increasing their ticket sales. Okay, because people want to come and see you play. Useful to any companies doing ads with you for ad revenue. Useful in terms of commercial sponsorships. Okay, and so on. And so any pro soccer or football player has a jersey and it has logos on it. Okay, some time ago, of course, you're seeing a Barcelona jersey with Qatar Airlines on it. Okay, this is a sort of thing in which the players who are getting attention, then the consciousness will be reading Qatar Airlines, okay, and then so on and so forth. And so the players are useful to Qatar because they're getting attention. That attention then popularizes Qatar Airlines, okay. And so if you are getting attention from the entire world, okay, you are very useful to companies that want to, in partnerships with you, either by having you as a player for a club or doing ads with you or having commercial sponsorships. That attention makes you useful to any entity that's in partnership with you that is using that attention to profit. Okay, and so on. Okay, and so on. Now, and so on and so forth. Okay, and so on and so forth. Now, let's say you are a technical nerd, like myself has mainly been technical nerd career path. Okay, and so on and so forth. I have a half brother who recently got a master's in computer science and recently hit the earning $200,000 US in a year with a master's in computer science. Okay, this fellow is in his 30s, I believe, something to that effect. Okay, and so basically, okay, if you are a technical nerd on career path to get undergraduate then graduate degree in something technical, and it took a lot of effort and energy to get that trained in that technical thing, you are lucky to earn even $200,000 a year. Okay, The world's best athletes make way more than that. Okay? And so let's examine Erling Haaland, who everyone is talking about now. What is Erling Haaland's life? Okay? Erling Haaland is born to Alfie Haaland, okay, who already was a professional football player, played with Manchester City and so on as defender, as sometimes midfielder, okay? And Alfie Haaland's net worth is about 5 million, okay? Then he's born as well to exceptional athlete mother who is a heptathlon athlete, okay? So there's triathlon, then there's heptathlon. And so Erling Haaland's mother is heptathlon athlete. Okay? And so Haaland has said himself that he got footballing knowledge from father and then his speed from his mother. Okay? And so, basically, Haaland got introduced and started playing soccer at 5 years old. His father is a professional player. Haaland get instruction as well about soccer, football from his father who already was a pro. Okay? By the time Haaland was 14, you can see a clip of him playing in some Arsenal jersey versus Borussia Dortmund jersey. Ironically, because he has never played for Arsenal, but he's played for Dortmund. And he is there with his strong left foot, powerful left foot as 14-year-old, scoring in some scrimmage game, Arsenal versus Dortmund. Okay? And so on. That is what Haaland, when he's 14, he's already been playing for 9 years. Okay? And so on and so forth. Okay? Myself, when I was 14, I was just learning how to play. I never had a father who was pro to like introduce me early to it, and so on and so forth. Okay? Anyway, Haaland and I are about the same age. Haaland is only 5 months older than me. Okay? So on and so forth. I was born to a single mother, or raised by a single mother, who was not very rich, and so on, renting place, and so on. Anyway, so on. And so, okay, and so on. Now, okay, so basically, if you start learning how to play football or soccer at 14 years old, by the time you're 18, you're not that good. If you start when you're 5 or 7 years old, by the time you're 18, you're very good. Okay, you could even be a pro at a decent club. Okay, and so on. Okay. Now, anyway, and so basically, okay, so on and so forth. And so, here now is the thing. So, Erling Haaland, I left comment on a video he made in the short section saying he likes nice cars. And I was saying that this is also showing that everything is wrong. Okay? So Erling Haaland fixed weekly salary from Manchester City is maybe £525,000 in 1 week. Okay? Meaning his yearly salary between 20 and 30 million. But with performance bonuses and other commercial sponsorships and so on, could be up to 80 million in 1 year. Okay? Now Haaland's net worth is 100 million. Okay? Which is 20 times his father's, which is 5 million. Okay? Alright? And so Haaland has a supercar collection worth 12 million, consisting of Lamborghini, Ferrari, and Bugatti Tourbillon. The Bugatti Tourbillon alone is 4 million, and it is hybrid between gas and electric. Okay? Now, so a human could live their whole life on the $4 billion that the Bugatti Tourbillon costs. Okay? And so on. Okay? Now, Haaland is not even the worst highest paid athlete. That is Cristiano Ronaldo, who even in his 40s in Middle East has been pulling in not 80 million at maximum like Haaland, okay, but over 200 million in 1 year is C. Ronaldo, even though he was in his 40s in the Middle East, okay, and so on, okay, and so this, that, and the other, okay. Now, so on and so forth, okay, so on and so forth, okay. Now, I'm 25 as I'm saying this. I'll be 26 in December. If I really train very hard, let's say I could be a pro player for a decent club by 28, and if Messi is still playing 39, Ronaldo till 41, I could be pro from 28 to 40, okay? Because if you see my skills from some of my soccer clips, I actually am pretty talented, but I started when I was 14, not when I was 5 or 7, and so on. Mother tell me about school, so on, not football, okay? Anyway, anyway, so anyway, so anyway, so anyway, yes, yes, so, yes, anyway, so, yes, and so ultimately, so on and so forth. And so the athletes, of course, going pro at a very high level is very hard, and very few people do it. You know, in terms of being among the best in the world or in the top leagues. Okay? And so, basically, okay, you can have master's computer science man, 200K US dollars 1 year. Haaland, 1 week, 525K pounds. Okay, more than double. And so in 1 week, more than double what master's computer science guy makes in 1 year. And that is the fixed base. Okay? And so with that fixed base, that means 20 to 30 million a year. With performance bonuses, commercial sponsorships, that can go up to 80 million. Okay? And so on. Okay? And so on and so forth. Okay? Now, so on. And so, when you're that elevated, you can then have supercar collection. Does supercar collection have a point? No, it does not. Okay? And so people at that high level, they always have some amount of arrogance and ego. Because to have many supercars worth $12 million is pointless. Some people do not even have one good car. Some people do not have housing. Some people have this, that, and the other. There is more than enough money to go around on the planet Earth for us to have a world of abundance with reduced inequity, where there is happiness. Okay? And so on and so forth. Now, why is Bugatti, still making cars? Because there exist people rich enough to afford the cars. Okay? And the people rich enough to afford the Bugatti cars enable the employees who make the Bugatti cars to get paid, because the cars are selling to very rich people, and this, that, and the other. Now, of course, I am for electrification of transport for reduction of emissions, and the modern Bugatti Tourbillon is a hybrid between gas and electric, which is a step in the right direction. But ultimately, I believe the Yangwang U9, which is fully electric, is even faster than the Bugatti Tourbillon. Okay? And so World's fastest car is electric now. Yang Wang U9. Something to that effect. Faster than Bugatti Tourbillon. Anyway. Anyway. So anyway. So yeah. Post-graduation college, I rented different places. I also leased a Tesla for 2 years, which I've now returned. I got some nice autopilot footage when I had the car. Leasing a Tesla is affordable, even if it includes autopilot, and is a nice alternative to the loan up to ownership paradigm, where your monthly payments are half of what they are if you're loan up to ownership. And vehicle depreciation is over 10% each year, so even if you finally own the car after the 5 years or 6 years you've been making payments to own the Tesla with a loan, once you sell it, once you own it, the amount of money lost is mathematically similar to money lost when you have a Tesla and you're leasing it, and so on. So anyway, so on and so forth. So anyway, so on and so forth. Yes. Yes. So anyway, yeah. Yeah. So, yes. Yes. And so Holland never went to college. Haaland's name is not on some complex quantum computing paper to 3D print ion traps. And so, geometries and fabrication methods for 3D printing ion traps is publicly viewable on ArcSiv. And then you can see in the acknowledgements my name is featured as the person who suggested the collaboration. And so on. And so on. So anyway, Haaland skipped college, was always, going just pro in soccer and so on. Okay. Anyway. So anyway. Yes. Yes. So yes. So. Yes. So anyway. Yeah. So anyway. Yes. Now anyway, and so basically, I ultimately respect Elon more with what he does with his wealth than Haaland. Okay. And so Haaland has supercar collection worth 12 million, including Ferrari, Lamborghini, Bugatti Tourbillon. Elon does not have any supercar collection. When Elon was young and foolish, he bought a McLaren when he got rich and then crashed it. But Elon in his wisdom said at some point, I'm selling all possessions, will own no home. And so Elon in his wisdom at present, although he's a trillionaire, that trillionaire is because of his ownership in all his brilliant companies, which he built to be as successful as they are in the present day. And so he's a trillionaire, but he does not have some pointless supercar collection. He is that rich because he has had many great ideas, worked 80 to 100-hour work weeks to make the company successful, to make the future of humanity brilliant, okay, and solve many technical problems. And so Elon, when you are the major owner or shareholder in a company, you have the most say as to the decision-making direction of the company. And so Elon, as the majority owner in all his companies, can sort of coordinate all of them to work together to converge towards a brilliant technological vision for humanity, involving even the Tesla Optimus components linking up with Neuralink to, for example, make Luke Skywalker real, to restore function to a person with amputated arm or malformed forearm given a defect or something, okay, and so on and so forth. Restore functionality, combining Optimus components with Neuralink and so on. Anyway, And so Elon is a trillionaire, but that is his company ownership. And with that majority company ownership, he can control the companies and their decision making to make them all work together towards his vision. When you give up company ownership, you have less control over the direction of the company. Even though Elon is a trillionaire, the SpaceX IPO made some random welder at SpaceX into a millionaire who was initially given 10 grand of SpaceX stock. After the IPO, it blew up to over $1 million. Some random welder. Okay? And so Elon is a trillionaire who does not have anything pointless possessions or supercar collection. He just controls the company's direction with his majority ownership, and does not, live some pointless, have pointless, extravagant possessions or whatever. Okay? And so Lamborghini contributes emissions, so does Ferrari. Bugatti Tourbillon is hybrid, maybe not as bad. And so Elon, of course, with Tesla accelerate the advent of sustainable energy. Of course, Elon have a Tesla. Okay, no emissions. Anyway. So on. And so capitalism works. Okay, it's the only system that's really worked. Communism has failed every time is tried, because you have an animal farm thing where everyone is equal except government. Okay. And so but you need to reform capitalism, make it not as retarded, where basically you can fix the inequity, where the people that are elevated because of whatever can choose to disperse their wealth in ways that are less selfish, or so on and so forth. Okay? And so I want to see Holland sort of sell many of his supercars and instead do some donations to fix inequity, and then a bunch of other stuff. Okay? Anyway, I will attempt to go pro even though I started late. You can see some of my videos with my skills. Again, I will be 26 in December of this year, 2026. And so I'm 25 now. And so if I worked really hard, maybe I could be a pro at a decent club by 28. And if Ronaldo is playing till 41, Messi till 39, maybe I could play till 40. Anyway, and if I ever earn a decent salary as a pro, I would not buy extravagant possessions. I would try and use that influence to change the system. Okay? Now, ultimately, the athletes are not rich if no one shows up to watch them. And so, at the World Cup final, the average ticket price might have been like $10,000 or something like that to watch, to be there. Okay? And so on and so forth. Okay? The World Cup made so much money. Okay? Anyway. Alright? And so on and so forth. Remember, a person who gets a lot of attention, that attention is monetizable. It makes them useful to whatever company or entity is partnering with that person for the amount of attention they get. And so on and so forth. Anyway. So on and so forth. So anyway. Yes. So anyway. Yeah. Anyway, so let's see now, what else now? There's a bunch of insecure men who are saying I'm 5 inches and a liar, but I am like as smart as God, and so I can read all of your pitiful minds. And note that a man's size does not make him superior. You must simply find good evolutionary matches and true love, in which there are women with small vaginal accommodation to be smaller men and have deep emotional intellectual connection and have a partner, and so on. Okay? And so on. And so a man's size does not make him superior. That is for the fools. But anyway, I am endowed by non-benevolent evolution, natural selection, and variance. And so non-benevolent variance in evolution leads to variance in human conditions and abilities and traits, and normal distributions in terms of everything intelligence, athletic ability, size of sexual assets, and so on. Okay, I'm not an atheist, I'm not a Christian. I have converged on non-benevolent deism, where God designed the universe to conserve energy, charge, and angular momentum, and those conserved quantities exist for a reason, because God designed them to be that way. And so angular momentum conserved, planet spins towards the east, figure skater spin faster when she brings her mass towards the center of her body. Okay, and so on and so forth. Conservation of angular momentum, conservation of energy, conservation of charge. The entire universe obeys those conservation laws, roughly. I don't pray to anything, okay? Prayer evolved as a delusion in benevolence, where the entities that are humans decided to construct a delusion in benevolence, pray to it, and then they have a confirmation bias if what was prayed for becomes true, and they attribute that to God hearing their prayer. The cycle perpetuates. It is called a God delusion, or the benevolent God delusion. And so I'm not atheist, I'm not a Christian, I do not pray. I'm a non-benevolent deist. I understand that there is probably God that designed the universe to conserve energy, charge, angular momentum as a machine, and you can understand that intelligent design, but that you cannot pray or talk to it. And also the variance that evolution allows is not benevolent, just evolution, variance, and natural selection, and so on. Anyway, so on and so forth. So on and so forth. So anyway, and so the moral principles from the world's religions are basically good. And so Christianity says in sickness and in health for marriage, this is good. Okay, and so when I sick with high fever, virus, on tight schedule, and if I want to see woman, I would see her when I am sick, because we're both on tight schedule. Then I have sex with her when sick, not potent, high fever and virus, and then I am just simply not potent, having sex with her in large part with my flaccid size. So in sickness, could be not potent. In health, then I'm potent. Okay? In present now, I can maintain my peak size, I'm healthy, I'm fit. Peak size is 8.8, 8.9 bone press. In sickness with high fever virus, not potent, could be 5.5 inches. Okay? So in sickness, health, so on and so forth. Anyway, but the people, women are too rotten to care about in sickness, health, in present time. If you're sick, you're not potent, a woman could treat you like trash. And then when you're potent, she's like, okay, so on and so forth, you are now potent. Because everyone is rotten, everything is rotten. Pure love in sickness, health. I have sex with a woman, I am sick, I am not potent, she loved me. I have sex with a woman, I am healthy, I am potent, I am much larger, she still loved me. And so on. Okay? Anyway. So anyway. So on and so forth. And so why does high fever virus make you not potent? High fever kills sperm count, hydration level. And then in general as well, if you're sick, you will be low energy, low libido, therefore not potent. So on. Anyway. Yes. 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 So anyway, so on and so forth. So anyway, now I'll talk about the World Cup, and so basically, anyway, so now I'll talk about the World Cup, and so a lot of people, okay, and so Elon Musk had said, what can't you predict? So with computer science and physics, you can simulate the universe. Therefore, what can't you predict? And so doing many Monte Carlo simulations involving current team form, the top players, the history of those two countries meeting up, this, that, and the other, you can determine win probability in a matchup for a World Cup game. Okay? Whichever team won more Monte Carlo simulations. Okay? And so many times these Monte Carlo simulations have been right. And so Spain beat Belgium, and England beat Norway, France beat Morocco, Spain beat Argentina in the final. But a few times they were incorrect, where basically I believe that the model might have given England slightly higher probability to beat Argentina, but Argentina ended up winning with 2 late goals. And then I believe that the model had given France slightly higher probability to win over Spain, but then Spain ended up winning. And then so on. So a few times the team that won more Monte Carlo simulations did not win, and so on. Okay, and so when the model gives higher probability to one team, it does not mean the other team cannot win. It means that the team with higher probability to win based on simulations has higher win probability, obviously, right? And so the model that is giving the predictions on Google correctly predicted Spain beat Belgium, France beat Morocco, England beat Norway, Spain beats Argentina in the final, but however incorrectly predicted that in fact Argentina beat England, okay, because they gave England higher probability to win, and so that Argentina beat England model was slightly off because England had higher win probability, and then of course Spain beat France model was giving France higher win probability, okay? And so based on team form, top players, historical matchups between those countries, you do Monte Carlo simulations, consider a bunch of variables. You can get whichever team won more simulations is more probability to win, and so on. So anyway, and so on. And so anyway, so on and so forth. And so anyway, now, here's the thing that many people do not understand about football. A few standout players, okay, or like best players or attackers does not make the team win. In football, the best team wins. Okay? Here's the biggest lesson. Who are the top scorers in the World Cup? Kylian Mbappe, French. Lionel Messi, Argentinian. Erling Haaland, Norway. Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham from England. Okay? And so none of those top scorers are from Spain, but Spain won. Why? Okay? Teams with great attackers or top attackers, okay, they'll have top goal scorers. But in football, the best team wins. Why did Spain win? Because they were the best team. And their philosophy and strategy was superior. Okay? Okay? And so, for example, other teams can have goal scorers. the Spanish national team does not have a world-leading goal scorer. Okay, Lamine Yamal is popular attacker who is good dribbler, and so on, and playmaker, but he's not a very top goal scorer. He was not a top scorer in the World Cup. Okay, and so on. Okay, Ferran Torres, the goal he scored in the final, was the only goal he scored in the World Cup. Okay, and so Spain does not have a world-class goal scorer machine like the other countries had. Spain had the best midfield and the best defense. Okay, and what I mean by that is so on. Okay, and so okay, and so basically, okay, so on and so forth. Now, ironically, when I started getting into soccer, on FIFA 16 especially, without opening packs, just by winning games and trading on the transfer market, I built a tiki-taka Barcelona team consisting of many Pep Guardiola era players from Barcelona. And so somewhere on the channel exists FC Barcelona Tribute, which is my tiki-taka Barcelona tribute, where I built this legendary Barcelona team: Messi, false nine; David Villa, Pedro, Iniesta, Cesc Fabregas, Busquets, Adriano, Dani Alves, Piqué, Mascherano, Bartra, Victor Valdez, much more as well. So on and so forth, and so on. And so basically on FIFA you can tune your team to have the wing backs attack, and then to do this, that, and the other, to this, that, and the other. Now, when Spain won in 2010, it was basically the tiki-taka Barcelona team, okay, that won, okay. When Spain won now, it is as well Spanish tiki-taka that won. And so no one really playing on the Spain team was from Real Madrid, even though Real Madrid is the most successful and decorated club in terms of Champions League wins. And so it was Spanish tiki-taka. There were many Barcelona players on the Spain team. Okay? Okay? And so, okay? Now, okay? And so, basically, okay? You're having all that. Yes, yes, and so on and so forth. Now, yes, 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 yes. And so, who is getting the golden ball for World Cup? Is it attacker? No, it is Rodrigo, who's a central defensive midfielder. Okay? People who are not very intelligent in terms of how football works will always give their attention to the flashy attackers, the goal scorers. But who got the golden ball was Rodrigo. Okay? Because as central defensive midfielder, what he does off the ball, and as well his defensive abilities, his passing abilities, his tiki-taka abilities, and even as well his ability to shoot with power from distance. At times as well he can score, and so on. Okay? And so what Rodri does off the ball as well, and so on. Okay? Okay, and so this, that, and the other. Okay? Now, and so on and so forth. Okay? So on and so forth. Now, okay? And so, okay? Ultimately, okay? How did Spain beat France? The people are saying, oh, France is more likely to win versus Spain. France has Mbappe, Olise, Dembele, Doué. They have that attack, and that attack was very powerful against Morocco, and you saw how good it could be. Okay. Now, how in the hell, okay, does Spain beat France? Okay. If you watch clips of Spain versus France, So Spain does what they do best, which is their midfield and defense is so strong that the French players chase down the ball, they cannot get the ball. There are many clips from that Spain-France game where Spain is playing like prime Barcelona, doing tiki-taka. Players cannot get the ball. Okay? And so, with the strength of the structure of the Spanish midfield and defense, okay, Mbappe was nullified. Okay? They were tiki-taka in possession, they couldn't get the ball. Okay? And so on. And then this, that, and the other. Okay? And so they won penalty. Of course, the penalty was interesting. Digne made a mistake. Okay? And then, of course, I believe it was Pedro Porro, who was actually a right back. In Spanish tiki-taka, Barcelona tiki-taka, the wing backs attack as well. And so Pedro Porro passed to Olmo, I believe. Then Olmo, tiki-taka pass, through pass, behind defense. And then Pedro connected with the pass and then finished. He's a right back. Okay? And so in tiki-taka, the right backs as well, the wing backs attack. Okay? And so that's his example of that. Okay? So on. Okay? Now, anyway, and so on. Okay? Now, yes. So on and so forth. Yes. So anyway, so yes. And so the French midfield and defense and possession nullified the Spanish midfield and defense and possession nullified the French attack. And then Digne made a mistake, there was penalty, and then tiki-taka goal with Pedro Porro right back attacking with Olmo, and then so on. And then the level of dominance of the Spanish team was seen in the final, where basically Argentina only had 3 shots with 0 on target. And so the Argentine team had to foul Spain to get the ball off them. Right? And so the Spanish midfield and defense is so dominant that Argentina could not do anything, barely get the ball off them. When Argentina had the ball, the Spanish team pressed, and so on.
Who are you talking to?
I was making a recording, but sorry, I could pause. I was just making a recording, but I could pause. So, yes. And so Argentina could not really get the ball from Spain. Spain is doing high pressure. And so basically Argentina sort of barely was able to keep the ball in Spain's half. And so when Argentina was on the ball, there's Spanish high pressure, they win the ball back. And then the Spanish team was controlling possession often in Argentina's half. And so Spain had up to like 11 shots on target with maybe 19 total shots. Argentina had 3 shots with none on target. Spain had the majority of possession. And so it was only a matter of time after many Argentine fouls and many opportunities that Spain would win. and so the model was correct in saying that Spain would win, and so on. It was obvious. And so Messi alone, with, of course, Lautaro Martinez, and of course Julian Alvarez and Enzo Fernandez and a few other decent players from Argentina. The Argentine midfield and possession and defense is nowhere near as strong as Spain, and Messi could not do that, with Lautaro Martinez, Julian Alvarez, Enzo Fernandez against the Spanish midfield and defense, which is way too dominant. Now Messi is 39, that he got so many goals and assists, and was nearly the top scorer, but Mbappe beat Messi out simply because of the third place game versus England, where he got a brace. Okay, but that game was simply a third place playoff where the scoreline was high because there's no knockout stakes. The players are trying to stat pad. Perhaps the mentality is such that things are different. They're not caring as much. There's no knockout stakes, and so the defensive pressure and level of players are caring about the game is less, and so on. Anyway, then players are stat padding, and so Mbappe got more goals than Messi because of the third place playoff, where there was 10 goals in that game. But anyway, and so Mbappe 10 goals, 4 assists, Messi 8 goals, 4 assists, I believe. Anyway, so anyway, so yeah, so anyway, yes, yes, so yeah, as well, you will note as well with the Spanish players, even the center backs can pass extremely well and have great ball control. And so young player Kubarsi, okay, he's very composed, he has very good passing. And so on the Spanish team, the best Spanish defenders, their ball control and passing is like they are a midfielder. And so that is as well what makes Spain special, and so on. Anyway, so anyway, these have been my thoughts. I want to turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. I want to change everything. Use GreenFi. I think my tree count is over 830 now. Trees are planted in Kenya and Haiti, employ Kenyans and Haitians to plant trees. Few American cents per planting of a tree. And so that nullifies the emissions of gasoline passenger cars while employing Kenyans and Haitians. And so I tried my best in this video to say true things. I am a pretty good source of truth, and I will turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. By that I mean the entire situation. And this has been Deus Ex Machina. Subscribe to the channel.